that goes in this conversation of, and I always have with people who are kind of entrepreneurial, doing their own thing. It's just like, how do you approach your work? Do you have a plan, or do you just kind of fly by the seat of your pants? You just kind of do like the flow of life method.
Yeah,
I mean,
the latter.
I feel like the latter is what I've been doing as well, but it's kind of freaky to do it that way because I feel like it's kind of beaten into us that we need to have some idea of what we want to do in stone of some kind.
But don't you think too, like, gone are the days of where you picked a career?
Maybe that's what is still within me and I need to get rid of.
Right, because I think our parents and our grandparents, that was their generation.
Yeah.
You picked a career, you went to school for something, you picked a career.
Right.
You got a job at Honeywell and you worked there your entire career, you know?
Yeah.
And that just isn't the way the world works anymore.
Yeah, that's what my dad and my grandfather really beat into me. My grandfather just especially being the kind of, stricter, more stoic kind of person who went through the Great Depression and has like a no-nonsense thing towards life.
Right.
And I don't think he really understands what I'm doing.
No.
And I don't think he really is paying attention to that because he can't like comprehend, if you're not doing a 9-to-5 type dealio and you're having a family in your 20s, like what are you doing? And and that has been really beat into me. So that's why I just have this confusion of like, I'm kind of just winging it and it's working out, but I feel like this is not the way to do it. I don't know. It's really interesting, and I think we're in a period where we are just now making that transition of career mindsets.
Yeah.
From the old way to the new way, and it's really interesting because I personally know some people in my generation or just my peers in general who are still holding on to that older mindset.
Oh yeah.
And it's you live life how you want to live life.
Yeah.
It's no judgment on them, but I just find that interesting. And
but don't you think it's due to globalization that we live in this global economy now? Your grandfather couldn't even imagine an economy like this. The ability to travel anywhere, the ability to be online and connected and communicate with anyone at any time 24/7. I mean, like, when he was your age, he couldn't even imagine what that would be like. So I think globalization has been the thing that's kind of turned careers and turned paths to do whatever you want, you know? And for better, for worse, right? Because due to the internet, you could be asked to work all day, all night because it's there, right?
Yeah.
My husband works in IT, so yeah, he struggles with that a little bit about he's got people who are working while he's sleeping and vice versa, and just the ability, like, you're always on. He always has his phone and he's always on and connected. So yeah, I think, again, your grandfather couldn't have, he went home at 5:00. I mean, he was done working, so it's just different. Right.
Yeah, it's different, and it's not even different in a good way or a bad way. Just certain values have shifted, and now we're just kind of going along with those shifted values. And it's kind of cool to see, but thinking this way is something I've been trying to do less because I think it's no good. But it's going to be interesting to see how this shift continues and see what it's going to become ultimately.
Right.
Like the other day, I was. I'm 26. The other day I was on a walk and I just had this really weird thought of, man, what am I going to be doing in like 2050 or 2060? I'm likely going to live that long. Like, what are things going to look like then? And it's just, I got into this really weird mode of thinking where if things have changed like if you think of like 1950 to 2020, the amount of things that have changed in that time period, just imagine
crazy.
2020 to 2090.
Yeah.
This is a wormhole conversation. We're going off, but I mean,
okay.
it's going to be interesting to see how work continually changes.
And maybe swings back. Maybe swings back to more traditional hours, traditional mindset. Like the idea, I think millennials are kind of rejecting the idea that you're expected to work all the time.
Right.
Like setting boundaries around that.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting, like for my kids to kind of see what the landscape looks like when they're grown.
Right. Yeah, well, your kids, how many kids do you have?
I have 3.
You have 3. Okay, What are their ages?
12, 9, and 6.
Wow.
Yeah. They all started school today, so.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
They're certainly going to be looped into a whole new world that we can't comprehend.
Right. I mean, my 12-year-old has already built a computer. He's coding. Gosh. You know what I mean? Like, he's gone beyond my capacity years ago already, like he codes things all the time, and he speaks a foreign language to me.
Wow.
And I'm just like, But how great for him at 12 that he, has that skill set and is taking that to, but it's all of his friends code. I mean, it's very much kind of what kids are into right now at that age. But I think of myself at 12, we were doing Oregon Trail on a computer. You know what I mean?
As was I.
Yeah. It's very different, but kind of exciting too.
Yeah. Well, let's loop them into there's a lot that I like to talk about, but let's loop them into the COVID-19 situation. How have they been handling it?
Yeah, it's been rough. That initial kind of week of incoming, shutdown, and we were supposed to go to Florida for spring break that week. And so that whole weekend kind of before the stay-at-home was given by the governor, we'd been kind of prepping them like, okay, we're kind of making some decisions here. We might not go on spring break. Of course, we'd been talking about it for months and just, but it just was kind of scary. And, and then at first they were excited, like, oh my gosh, we get to be home for 3 weeks. Like, because they had an extended spring break, school kind of like closed for 3 weeks to kind of like scramble with what are we going to do for the rest of the year. And then as we dove into distance learning and it became more of a reality, it was rough. And they were missing it. I mean, a couple weeks of novelty, and then it was back to, when do we go back to school, Mom? And like throughout the rest of the spring it was, well, they extended it through like May 1st. Maybe we'll get to go back to school in May. Maybe we'll get to go back to school for 2 weeks in June. It was just this constant, fingers crossed kind of hopefulness, even though my husband and I looked at each other like, there's no way they're going back to school. And then we were, together all summer, all plans canceled, and have just spent a lot of time together, which has been great, but has sucked as well because, 5 people in a house and you get sick of each other. And just kind of in late July, early August, we kind of opened up the circle a little bit to get some of their friends over for one-on-one play dates and to just be outside, because we were sort of looking ahead to fall and winter when we're probably going to be back inside again. Like, okay, let's get some friend time in now. And they got tired of screens. They got tired of doing school. Yeah, which is crazy to say for kids, right? Kids
of this particular generation.
Right.
They're so glued to those screens. For them to get tired of it, it's like, oh, okay.
But after Zoom play dates and Zoom, with friends and classroom Zooms and everything, at the end of the day, they were just like, I don't want to do this anymore. So yeah, it was a real shift and a challenge. And they're excited about school starting today. 2 of them are in person. One's home doing hybrid. For how long, who knows?
Yeah.
But they all, over the weekend, were talking about how they're usually super excited to start school, and no one was really excited because it's not normal school,
Yeah.
So, we'll see. Fingers crossed.
Right.
Nobody really knows what we're doing, so we're just winging it.
Yeah.
Talk about winging it. We're winging this for sure.
Everyone's winging everything.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of winging it, you with your entrepreneurial endeavors with Nosh Gather, I mean, you must be learning new things all the time, not only about yourself but about your business, and just like
that's all I've done is wing it.
Right. Well, tell me about it. I mean, that must have been crazy.
Yeah. So I initially kind of soft launched the business in January and did kind of a 6 week.
It's pretty new. That's crazy.
Yeah. It's not even a year old yet. It's such a baby. I did kind of a test and learn phase with friends and family to just kind of try out the meal. I do weekly ready to heat and eat meals, and either I'll deliver them to your door or you'll pick them up. And that was one arm of the business. And so I was kind of testing that out with friends and family, just like the method, the menus, the quantities, all of that for those first 6 weeks. And then March 1st, I signed a 6-month lease with my kitchen, launched Nosh Gather out into the world. The website was live, ordering was live, right? Did a whole launch party. I mean, the world was looking pretty rosy. And March 1st, right? And 2 weeks later, the stay-at-home order comes out from the governor, and it was it stopped. Everything stopped. And, the lead up to what we thought was the stay-at-home order, I had just reached out to my existing clients, friends, and family and said, because that was when grocery stores were scary. They were out of everything. It was chaos to go. Everyone was really amped. And I said, okay, how can I help you? Like, what, like, forget weeknight meals right now. Like, what do you need? How can I help serve you right now? And everyone said, help me stock my freezer. Help me stock my freezer with meals that I can pack away, because we just didn't know what the next 30, 60 days looked like. So I cranked out a ridiculous amount of, good old Minnesota casseroles and mac and cheese and breakfast stuff and quiches and all kinds of stuff, and loaded everybody up, and then just kind of crossed my fingers thinking, okay, maybe they'll treat me like a restaurant because I do, meal delivery, meal pickup service. But that first day at home, my attorney and I were on the phone, and she was like, it's kind of gray. It's gray for you because I'm not a restaurant. I'm not based out of a restaurant. I'm a caterer, but I'm not a restaurant caterer. It's just, I was in this weird kind of place, and it's just me, myself, and I. And so, she said, you could decide to kind of ignore it and go forth, but that's not really my personality. I'm kind of a rule follower. And with a brand new business, I was like, I don't know. So those first 2 weeks I took off and just kind of told my customers and clients, I don't know what's going to happen, but then had a really emotional reality of, oh my gosh, what if this whole business goes away? Because suddenly everyone's home to make dinner now. Like, you don't need dinner because you're home for however long. And that was kind of the pitch behind Nosh to Go, was you're picking up your kids from school, you want to get them something to eat before you run them to a sporting activity or to a lesson or whatever. And suddenly all that stopped, and suddenly you're home all the time. You've got all the time in the world to make dinner. So, and then I also was like, this was so brand new. I mean, it literally was weeks old, and my husband and I had hard conversations about, should we just shut this down? Should we put this on hold for a year? Like, it was just so uncertain, right? And I was just devastated because I'd invested. I mean, when you start a business, it's not like you have an idea and you start it the next day, right? There had been months of pre-work leading up to this. And so I kind of marinated in that ugly place for a while of, what am I going to do? I'm talking to other entrepreneurs, kind of leaning on friends. And everyone was like, I don't know, Liza, I feel like once you're able to be open in the kitchen again, you might have a new audience of people that are going to want weeknight meals for their family because turns out they suck at making dinner, or they can only make 3 things and their family's sick of it, or you've been on a Zoom call for 9 hours and you're so brain fried, the last thing you can think about is making dinner, right?
Have you actually been on a Zoom call for 9 hours?
Yes.
Wait, really?
Yeah. And all day. Mm-hmm.
What
so
was that?
My husband. Uh-huh. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What was it for?
Or one after another. You know what I mean? Meeting after meeting after meeting. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it's mind-numbing.
Just quick caveat here. I hate Zoom so much. I don't know about you, but there is just video. That's why I do this in this format. It might be more inconvenient. There might be more ambiance that might be annoying. I would seriously rather have that than do these interviews over Skype or Zoom. And I mean, I'm ready to face the reality that I might have to go back to that with winter coming. But still, it's just it's very hard to, especially in my line of work, to really connect with someone in a meaningful way. And it's even a problem when you're just trying to have a meeting and trying to get a point across. There's something missing. Yeah. And that's been one of the biggest bummers about this whole thing, is just that lack of connection. But it's we're just kind of, again, we're winging it. It's what we've got. So. Yeah.
So after I kind of got done feeling sorry for myself, I was like, okay, now what, Liza, right?
Right.
And it was right, the order was going to be modified right before Easter. And we kind of had a heads up that it'd open up a little bit more flexibility for people with businesses like mine. And so I thought, gosh, no one's going to be gathering for Easter with their families. Restaurants were closed at that time. They didn't have to-go options ready. I mean, it was real fresh and new. And I thought people are going to they're still going to celebrate Easter, whether they're doing church online or they're churchy or not or whatever, right? And so I kind of threw it out there on social to friends and family and clients and said, hey, if I put together like a 4-course Easter brunch, would you guys buy this? And immediately, within 24 hours, I mean, I was blown away. I kind of oversold it before. I was like, oh crap, how many did I actually just sell? But cranked it out, and people were so grateful, right? And immediately said, please do this for Mother's Day, because they were looking a month ahead. And what I knew was that Easter's the number one busiest day for restaurants of the year, and right after that is Mother's Day. They're the two busiest days that's where they do the most business the whole year. And I thought, okay, people are going to want this option for Mother's Day. And as the month drew on, I realized not only did they want like a Mother's Day brunch for their little 4-person, 5-person nuclear family, but then I did a 2-person option where you could add on your parents. Send it to your parents. You guys could connect over Zoom and have Easter brunch together or FaceTime or whatever and share the same meal even though you couldn't be together. And so I threw that out there, pivoted again, and it went like that. And people were like, yes, I 100% in. Can I buy 2 or 3? Or can I had some people that would send them to their neighbors, brunch to their neighbors, or right? Because again, restaurants weren't really, they were kind of working out that to-go thing. Some were like just totally closed still. And it was kind of crazy, but people didn't want to stop celebrating. They didn't want to stop having kind of these special events, especially Mother's Day when your mom's been homeschooling you and doing all that. Like, husbands were calling me, Liza, I need your help. So that happened for a while. And then I kind of got it back into weeknight cooking right before George Floyd was murdered. Mm-hmm. And then everything kind of stopped again, right? Because my kitchen's in South Minneapolis. We weren't kind of sure where all the chaos was happening. Rightfully so. We lived blocks from where he was murdered for 10 years in South Minneapolis. So I knew that neighborhood. I've got friends that still live there. So that was another okay, I can't just keep doing my normal thing. And so I reached out to clients and said, hey, I don't want to cook for you this week. I want to cook for families who've been affected by this, who've lost everything. Friends or families and students in that area were getting groceries delivered or grocery pickup. But sometimes a hot meal is like all you want after you've had PB&J and whatever. And so I connected with a mom who teaches at one of the schools in South Minneapolis. And I said, hey, can you connect me to however this works, but some families who've been really impacted in this neighborhood, and can I help? And she was like, absolutely. So for, a couple of weeks, that's what I did, was bang out meals for those families. And my clients were so generous. They would say, here's, money for groceries, go do this. I don't need food this week. Because everyone was kind of in that giving place again of like, we got to do something, right? And then my kitchen mates at Kitchen Space, we ended up keeping that ongoing throughout the summer, just in a smaller quantity, and just, again, connected with a school and just said, we're going to give you meals once a week, hot meals ready to go. You decide who gets them. We don't need to be involved in that. And that's been really great too, because we all kind of had this thought of, okay, there's going to be all this donating happening kind of right away after the impact and for a few weeks after that neighborhood had suffered so greatly. But what about July and August and September? So I'm back to now doing regular weeknight cooking again, and that's kind of that arm of the business. And what's funny again is that when I started this, I thought that would be kind of just a side kind of gig of doing pop-up dinner parties and doing catering and doing other things, but that's turned into kind of the growth of what's happening right now. And I'm selling out every week, and I get new families all the time. I'm not really advertising much. It's kind of happening word of mouth. So yeah, it's been pivot. So, and who knows? I mean, who knows what's going to happen, right? Because I'm already thinking ahead to, okay, I don't think people are going to grandma's for Thanksgiving this year. They're going to need a small Thanksgiving option. Yeah. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, it really is an incredible story of just having this business that you created and having all these hopes and dreams for it, and then all of a sudden the world was like, nope. Here's what you're going to actually do. Yeah, time out. Here's the real deal. Right. And I think I just think it's been, as horrible as these things have been, both the paradigm shifting nature of the murder of George Floyd and the pandemic, as horrible as these things have been, they've almost been necessary for a lot of us to really rethink who we are and change what we're doing in a fundamental way. Not just like, oh, I got to do things differently. No, just really look deeply and understand, okay, who am I? What's my mission? Am I being selfless enough? Am I giving enough? Yeah. And I mean, maybe it's some sort of karma for electing the person that we did, not to get political or anything, but it's really interesting that this is happening at this moment. And it's so important that, you know, we do what you have done, and we just find ways, okay, solutions, instead of just kind of like bowing down to it and being like, this is too much, I hate this is horrible, this is such a terrible year. I think this is just a really great opportunity for us to understand how we can change and enact change. And it's given me, and I hope it's done this for you, but it's given me confidence in knowing that, okay, if I was able to handle this without like moving back to my parents' house and like keeping my creative work going, I almost feel like I can handle anything, because this has just been an onslaught of stuff. And I feel like I've gotten so creative in my life and with my work, and I hope you feel the same way. I mean, obviously by your story, I'm sure you do. Just, we've become new problem solvers entirely.
And you're right. You know, my husband and I have had this conversation of, okay, if this new business makes it and I turn a profit, even if it's a small one this year, I mean, praise be, right?
Wow,
it's just, you know, the fact that I have felt so grateful, one, that I have been able and had the support both from him and my landlord and my people that I share space with at the kitchen, and other women entrepreneurs that I kind of treat like my board of directors, to say, okay, this is my struggle. Let's brainstorm around how, you know, to do this. I did a state fair menu 2 weeks ago, you know, which was tricky because all the food at the state fair is deep fried. And I'm thinking, okay, like how can I spin that a little bit and kind of give people, nourish them a little bit and take the sting out of not having the state fair a little bit. And again, it sold out. It was great. And it's been really nice to kind of pause and think, okay, how can I creatively turn and shift a little bit, but still people need to eat. People need to be nourished. People need to come together with their families and eat. Some catering gigs are starting to come back, socially distanced, everything's prepackaged, but those things aren't going away, right? We're just kind of creatively pivoting on how to do that and produce that right now. I've done some anniversary dinners. You know, people have wanted to celebrate their anniversary and not just get takeout from a restaurant, even though that's great. Trust me, I'm ordering so much takeout right now. But could we curate kind of a more personalized menu? Mm-hmm. You know, can I make you a pan of risotto and just give you instructions on how to reheat it, or et cetera? And so that's been kind of the arm of the business that's surprised and kind of come up out of nowhere. I'm calling it Gather Your Way because, again, you and I are brainstorming and being creative about what's your need, what event are you celebrating? Is it a backyard patio with your girlfriends with 6 people sitting 6 feet apart, but you want little individual charcuterie boxes, or, you know, that kind of thing. So that's been really fun too, to kind of creatively spend some time working on that. And people are still getting married. They're just getting married with 10 people or 20 people or, you know, it's just different. And it'll be interesting to kind of see how much of that stays different and how much of it, I don't know, kind of changes back to the way it used to be, or a new normal, I keep calling it, of whatever, however we land, you know, in the future. Right.
So, we're all using the same words, a new normal, pivot, whatever. These are all like the buzzwords right now.
That's what everyone's using at school right now. Oh, what pod are you in? I'm like, oh, that's such a strange word.
Super weird. Yeah, we're living in a very strange future right now. But no, speaking of this idea of creativity, I mean, what is your creative process? You mentioned that as a female entrepreneur, you have like a brain trust of other female entrepreneurs that you go to and like talk to about things and discuss with. I mean, what's your process with that?
So it's called the Business Women's Circle, and everyone is a solo entrepreneur in a different field, and we meet once a month. So everyone's kind of an expert in what they do, but because we're all solo, we don't have a marketing department or a lawyer or a finance person, right? So we kind of bring it to this group, and they structure these meetings to where, you know, we kind of check in with our businesses and then allow time for like, what do you need help with right now? And they've been crucial. I mean, every big decision that I've made, starting with just the creation of this business, like, should I do this? Do you think there's a market for this? Has been cleared by them, because I value their input so much, and they're all creative entrepreneurs in their own right. So, you know, when a door gets closed with COVID or whatever, you know, they're the first group text I go to and say, okay, you guys, here's what's happening. And they've done the same. So that I always say, like, I treat them like my board of directors for sure. And then, yeah, my husband, you know, like making sure, okay, like, how are we going to do school? And I have a job that I have to leave the house and go cook for, and he can work at home. And how do we manage all of that? I mean, it's a constant conversation. So yeah, that kind of team of people has just been crucial with the business.
I mean, what a blessing that is, though, as a female entrepreneur, to have a group of other females who you can speak to and be like, hey, this is what's going on, and they can relate to what you're going through, and they can understand. And I mean, that's just, I feel like that's crucial to success.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just having that brain trust of people who you can be so deeply relatable with.
Yeah.
And just be like really open and honest with. I mean,
and vulnerable.
Vulnerable too,
you know,
vulnerability.
To just, to at some point say, should I shut this down?
Yeah.
Should I, you know, is this not the right time to pursue this business? Is, you know, and we've kind of all had those conversations because they're all in different fields, and COVID's affected all of us. And so, yeah, having that crew has just been, I would for sure not have had the courage or kind of the guidance to even start the business or pursue it if I wouldn't have had that kind of core group of women, badasses in their own right. Yeah.
Well, this might be a bit of a detour, but speaking of you and your husband, how have you two been doing?
You know, it's been bumpy, you know, kind of when everyone came home. I've got this new business that, you know, was in its infancy, you know, that I just felt needed so much nurturing. And all of a sudden, I was a stay-at-home mom for 11 years, launched all my kids into school last fall thinking, all right, let's do something new.
Time for mom to kick some ass. After kicking ass at home, time to kick ass in like the business world.
Let's kick ass doing something new.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it definitely took some of those conversations about roles and responsibilities and expectations and how are we going to do this? And, you know, obviously, like, you know, the business is not super profitable right now because this is a building year. But, you know, he has this attitude of, just because I make so much more money than you doesn't mean that he's like, I can't ask you to just stop this or just not do this. He's like, you've invested so much into this. So he's been super supportive, but definitely it was bumpy just trying to figure out, how do we manage this? Who manages school in the morning? Do I shift my kitchen hours and go to the kitchen later in the day so that I can help with distance learning too? Turns out that I am the worst teacher. He's way more patient, way more tech savvy than I am. So he, it ended up being, you know, Mr. Atkinson was better than